you all for joining us for our first program of 2023. Programs committee has a full lineup for this year, so it's going to be great. So stay tuned, check the website, and come join us. It's going to be a nice mixture of Zoom and in-person meetings. So tonight, I am very happy to introduce Nadine Phillips. Nadine is a certified nature.
Yeah, I know.
Sandy, will you mute yourself?
I
think I can probably do it, actually.
On Highway 153 has died. They named her Asha. She was extremely.
Nadine is a certified nature and forest therapy guide, accredited by the International Nature and Forest Therapy Alliance, headquartered in Melbourne, Australia. She wears a lot of hats, which is so impressive and pretty indicative of someone with such passion for in the environment, saving the environment, and bridging the gap between humans and the environment. She, like she said earlier, is the vice president of the Mississippi Native Plant Society, the historian for the Cullowhee Native Plant Conference, and is a longtime volunteer at the Crosby Arboretum, which is on my bucket list. She was recently a speaker at the Edward C. Martin Jr. Landscape Symposium at Mississippi State University, and she has been a guest on a couple of plant podcasts, one of which, the Native Plant Podcast, is where I first heard her speak. So she was a guest in 2019, and I'm late to the Native Plant Podcast game, but so I recently listened to it, and her passion and light just emanated through her voice. So I was like, we got to get her. So thank you so much for agreeing to do our program tonight. So I will hand it over to you, and thank you again. Thank you, everyone.
What a sweet introduction. Thank you so much. Greetings, fellow lovers of the earth and of wild things. I am honored to be with you this evening. I'm here to talk about something that is clearly essential to all of us, and that is our connection to nature. I will get the let me get my screen back. I'm going to share my screen. And I want to be sure. Isn't there a way that I can view my screen? You guys can see the big screen, but I can see what's coming up. Is that presentation mode, perhaps?
I am
Does
not
anyone
sure.
know?
Christina, Bill, do either of y'all? No.
I'll probably be okay. Hopefully I won't. We'll just give it a go and see what happens. We're all wild ones lovers. We'll be wild this evening. So let's see. Okay, so can you see my screen? Great.
Indeed. Perfect.
Okay, get all of that. I don't know how to get all these other things on there. Okay, so before I tell you more about nature and forest therapy, I thought I would, oh, wait a minute. Let me see. I can't advance this way. Let me see how I can advance. Well, pause sharing. Oh my goodness, this is so embarrassing. Hold on a second. I'm going to start over. I was hoping that there's a way I can advance.
Just use page down.
Okay.
You, Bill.
Now, I see Bill. Hey, Bill. There we go. So I thought I would share interspersed in here are some photos of my favorite things that I would like to share with you guys. But before I get going, I wanted to share a little bit of information with you about things that I find that are very relevant at the moment with regard to why forest therapy is more important than ever before. And nothing's happening. There we go. Thank you for your patience again. So this is not quite a full soapbox moment, but these are things that are very important to me that I wanted to bring up with regard to the relevant, like I said, the relevancy of nature and forest therapy at this moment in human history. First of all, we talk about how hard 21st century human life is. We all know that life is hard enough as a human, but I'm not sure if you're aware that the Environmental Protection Agency talks about that the average American spends 90% of their time indoors, and the vast amount of that time is in an office environment. And when you add to that technological distractions, the stress from work, family stress, relationship stress, financial stress, all of those things contribute to a higher level of stress than most humans have had endured before now. So to talk about Richard Louve's concept of nature deficit disorder, none of us get enough nature. So that's one of the things is the rigors of 21st century life as a human. Another is, of course, the global pandemic that started a couple of years ago, and it's still upon us. I heard a wonderful podcast talking about from a clinical psychologist who spoke about the fact that from the moment our ears took in the threat that there was a global virus, that our bodies went into overdrive. As I said, our body's natural stress responses were activated, and it sent our nervous systems into overdrive, which it's never been able to fully retreat. The threat is still active. So whether we realize it or not, at a creaturely level, we are being bombarded with our system trying to take care of us. So one of the things that Christine Runyon spoke about was the fact that our bodies are on red alert, so that if whether you ever had COVID or you did not have COVID, the fact is that your body was on the defense against COVID one way or the other. So if you have had or continue to experience just feeling weird or tired or run down or confused, her response to that is, don't necessarily jump to the conclusion that something's wrong with you. It's just your body's way of trying to figure out what's going on. It's your natural protection system there, your autonomic nervous system trying to take care of you. So that was actually pretty sobering for me to see that. And the idea is, to cut everyone and yourself some extra slack. In human history, we haven't gone through a global pandemic quite like we have had and are still to some smaller degree. But nature and forest therapy practices can help with that, and you'll learn a little bit more in depth about that later. My final point of relevancy is one that is near and dear, and if I choke up, I won't sob, but it's something that's very important to all of us, and it's one of probably the reason that you're a wild one is that you want to help regenerate biodiversity. You want to improve planetary health. We all do. And for me, the greatest force toward making that effort happen and positive moves toward that is love. It's simple in that it's love. We all know, and we've all heard that people primarily protect the things that they love. And I love John Muir talks about that there's an ancient mother love that we all have for wild nature, whether we know it or not, whether we are directly attuned to our connection with nature or it eludes us. We all have that. And E.O. Wilson also pointed to that very same point when he popularized the term biophilia, which talks about we have an innate connection, an innate love for the natural world. those deeper connections to nature have to be rediscovered and rejuvenated in order for us to motivate the love and the what I like to call active cherishing that needs to happen. I learned that cherishing is actually a synonym for the word stewardship. Stewardship is a fine word, but for me, that heart element has to come into it. So we're especially those of us who are involved in actively involved in helping to wanting to rejuvenate biodiversity. It is incumbent upon us to share this love that we all have and deepen that love if we can, so that we can share it with others. As I wrote here, deeper connections to nature have to be rediscovered and rejuvenated. And forest therapy practices invite people to bond with nature in the ways that feel right for them. And I have a quote from one of my favorite inspirations, Buddhist ecologist and philosopher Joanna Macy, who talks about, with regard to planetary health, that many of us have a major amount of grief and fear, and a lot of people are stopped from action because of the fear. They feel like they can't do anything. They feel like they can't move, and there's nothing that you can do to help, because it seems so insurmountable. But she talks about when we look at our grief for the state of the planet, that if you will look at the other side, the flip side of that grief is your love for the planet, is your absolute love. You wouldn't have such a strong level of grief if you didn't have a strong level of love. And so one of the things that she tells us is, well, there's got to be a way to make this happen. Where's my next page? Oh, there we go. The biggest gift that you can give is to be absolutely present. And when you're worrying about whether you're hopeful or hopeless or pessimistic or optimistic, who cares? The main thing is that you're showing up, and that you're here, and that you're finding ever more capacity to love this world, because it will not be healed without that. That was what is going on to unleash our intelligence and our ingenuity and our solidarity for the healing of our world. And for me, that's where we all come in. We all already have this love, and I think that it is incumbent upon us to amp this love up a little bit so that we can share that with other people. And I made it through that without crying, so I'm excited about that. So moving on to my inspiration for the talk is beloved Mary Oliver. If you do not know about Mary Oliver, you should. And the reason that there's a very specific reason, I will not read this poem to you. I'll let you read it for yourselves there, but it's a beautiful poem from Mary Oliver talking about spending time among the trees. And that is where the power of nature and forest therapy that I mentioned in my subtitle comes in. Whenever you're among the trees, I have to tell you that Mary Oliver, for me and many of us, encapsulates the absolute spirit of nature and forest therapy principles. She talked about how her main work in this world was mostly standing still and learning to be astonished by the natural world as it unfolded before her. The comfort, the hope, the love that she found there among the trees. And it is, as I said, it is among the trees where the power arises. So nature and forest therapy, as we know it today, developed roots in Japan over 40 years ago. It was begun by, oddly enough, the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, and Fishery officials, and it was a national health program in response to rising levels of stress. Shinrin-yoku, it's also called forest bathing, it's a form of nature therapy that has grown into a cornerstone of preventative health care in not just Japan, but it's firmly established all over Asia. There is also currently research that's very robust in Europe that it's underway to establish forest therapy as a public health initiative. And my association, which I'll tell you a little bit more about in a moment, was one of the main forerunners in that. And so I'm sure forest bathing was popularized, the term forest bathing was popularized by Dr. Ching Li, and he was my first introduction into the scientific research of forest therapy, or forest bathing, as he calls it. If you ever have a chance to look up videos with Dr. Ching Li, you would really enjoy his exuberance, and he shows you how he does forest bathing, and it's enchanting. It's very advanced in Japan. There are a lot of aromatic forests and things there that they have designated for people to use. He talks about Shinrin-yoku means bathing in the forest atmosphere or taking in the forest through our senses. It's not exercise or hiking or jogging. It is simply being in nature, connecting with it through our sense of sight, hearing, taste, smell, and touch. It is like a bridge. By opening our senses, it bridges the gap between us and the natural world. And so what's happening in those moments that he's talking about is the sensory world. Our senses override that logical brain. And so we're able to receive these messages and the healing energy that comes from the forest. And you'll learn a little more about that in a moment. So Dr. Ching Li's book gave great examples and talked about the research from physical and emotional health benefit standpoints. Initially, the ones that he reported first were these general ones of lowered blood sugar levels, reduced blood pressure. All of these things here have to do with spending qualitative time in the forest. The more you spend, the better. I would like to call attention to that bottom one there of that repeated regular practice can increase the body's production of our natural cancer killing cells. So the more time you spend and you're taking in the atmosphere, there is a surge in your immune system over time that can kind of increase the way your body handles stress. And it activates that natural cancer killing ability that we have in our system. And so to give a little bit more detail with how it started, again, we'll go back to stress and my note here about the World Health Organization declaring stress to be the epidemic of the 21st century. But you know, that's old news now, a little bit old. But and we all know that stress has long been responsible for many forms of chronic illness. And so to elaborate a little on the discovery of Shinrin-yoku in Japan, in the early 80s, there were rising numbers of stress, a lot of suicide as a result of stress and depression. And they were desperate for a solution to find out what was happening. So as a result, many of the workers were given time to spend outside in the old growth conifer forest that Japan is not covered, but dappled with many old growth conifer forests. And so as a result, it was available, it was inexpensive, and it was a way that they could offer what they believed was just a physical health exercise program for people to just de-stress, to go outside. So that was the beginning, and they roughly translated in taking in the forested atmosphere or forest air bathing. And so over time, people got better in different ways, and I think it piqued a lot of interest in researchers, and the School of Forest Medicine was born, and research expanding across 3 decades, they learned that there were a lot of physiological benefits that were emerging that they could quantify. And so the research led to taking note of all of these health benefits. And so here we are, expanded across 3 decades. It led to the development of a public health approach to forest therapy. And that's where my alliance comes in, which is the International Nature and Forest Therapy Alliance. Probably the most exciting thing for me about being part of the International Nature and Forest Therapy Alliance is that they are a group of people that have taken the time to consolidate all of the information, and all of the research is there. It's a very collaborative group of people, and they have published the first ever handbook of forest therapy, which is there are contributors from, I believe it's 7 or 8 different countries for sure, many of them Asian countries, but also Germany and Asia. They are, as it says here, the peak body in the area of forest therapy. And they work to set up different realms of forest therapy, mainly with the focus on making forest therapy a public health practice. And the best, as my last line here at the bottom, the mission is to make forest therapy accessible for health and well-being of people worldwide. So for me, that's one of the things that I really appreciate, is being able to have access to the worldwide experts regarding nature and forest therapy. As an emerging discipline, one of the things that has really impressed me about our group of researchers is the fact that the information is shared. It's not proprietary, and it's for the benefit and for the betterment of all. And I really appreciate that. There are a lot of initiatives coming from the INFTA. As it says here, we conduct research and training workshops, corporate events, and also I was accredited as a forest therapy guide with the INFTA, and we also certify forest therapy trails. So there are a lot of ways to that these things are emerging. And the thing that I appreciate about the INFTA is that it's kind of at the forefront there of moving this forward to making it accessible to all people. So here we go back talking about our nervous system again. So these are the general effects of what's happening with forest therapy. It's taking your sympathetic nervous system that's always on and moving into spending qualitative, quiet time, deliberate time in nature and forested areas, allows your parasympathetic nervous system to kind of emerge and take over, and allows your body to relax. And among the main, here we go, the main direct effects of forest therapy practices. Here we have the primary physiological and mental health benefits. And these are just, this is not an exhaustive list, and there will be more added to the list as research continues to emerge. But like some of Dr. Ching Lee's main health benefits, we have the reduced blood pressure and the lowered pulse rate, relaxed stress hormone level, anxiety. Your relaxation response is activated within your autonomic nervous system, like we just talked about. Increase in the body's natural cancer and tumor fighting cells. And one of the things that I would like to point out is this next area here, active exposure to antifungal, anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, and antibacterial substances that are emitted by plants and trees. Increase happiness, positive mood, enhanced energy level, and better concentration. And so these are direct effects. These are things that happen right away, that can happen right away with direct exposure. And with the natural cancer killing cells, of course, repeated exposure, the more. And we have indirect effects that last, that we know that that accompany these. So these are the long-term cumulative effects here. And again, we're talking about an improved immune system, an increase in your overall fitness level, reduced risk of heart and lung disease, decrease in anxiety, reduced risk of getting depressed, less likelihood of feeling stressed in a typical day-to-day situation. And I believe we probably could all use those. Better and more regular sleep, more positive mood, meaning less mood swings, enhanced ability to focus. Again, I know I could use that always. Sharpened cognition, higher self-confidence. I would like to point out that the degree of measured health benefits varies, and it's not just the overall constitution there. It also depends on the time that you spend with regularity. But as you'll see later, we'll talk about how much time is enough. So here we are in the forest, and you're probably wondering to yourself, what is it about it that is, what's happening when we're here in the forest? What is it about it that's so healing? And so the magic comes from the phytoncides, those antimicrobial and antifungal and antibacterial and anti-inflammatory properties that I mentioned earlier. They are phytoncides, and these are the volatile molecules that are emitted by all plants and trees. Phytoncide typically refers to the aroma of the forest, as it says there. Phyton means plant, side means exterminate. So these are the same things like in milkweed, the toxic in milkweed that only allows, that protects the plant, protects the milkweed plant. It's the same process. These phytoncides are types of terpenes. And they're not only in the forest, but the reason that they are powerful in the forest is because of the way the canopy works. The canopy of the tree holds the air in. And so when you're traversing in the forest, you're walking through this molecular elixir and you're taking it into your body. I recently read an article, a travel article from Slovenia, who called phytoncides air vitamins. So I like that. I like knowing that we all have air vitamins around us at any point. But again, the efficacy and the thing that makes forest therapy so important is your ability to traverse and be in higher concentrations of these beneficial compounds that are emitted by the trees and plants around. And I show you this beautiful cypress forest because one of the incredible things about phytoncides is that, well, actually, one of the incredible things about cypress is that cypress trees emit the highest concentration of phytoncides. There is, I believe it's called a Hinoki cypress from Japan, emits the highest level. So here you are with cypress trees. And my understanding is that all parts of the tree emit the phytoncides. It's also present in essential oils as well. So that's the exciting thing about being in the presence of these beautiful cypress trees. And so in speaking about forest bath, they are, in general, they're nice, gentle walks that support well-being through sensory immersion and other naturally healing environments. Forest bathing sessions for me, my walks are typically between 2.5 to 3 hours when I guide groups. But the good news is, and we all already know this information, is that even just 5 minutes in nature can have a positive impact on your mood and help reinvigorate your senses and your spirit in the moment. So these are a few of the different things that, well, chances are good you've all already done every single one of these things. That is the most essential and exciting part to me of nature and forest therapy, is that all of these practices are within us, and some of these things we do quite naturally. The first thing when you go outside, you in the morning, you breathe in the air. That's your body's response there of taking in the aroma. It's your body's natural way of being in the world. And so these are some suggestions here. When you're exploring your site, look at all the colors, shapes, and movements in the trees, and look closely at the details. Enjoy the canopy. Our sense of smell, you breathe deeply, of course, and take in the fragrance from the trees and the earth. Maybe you know about petrichor, the smell of the rain touching the earth. One of the most beautiful aromas in the world. And hearing, of course, is wonderful. Hearing works very well. I like my hearing exercises with my eyes closed. That seems to really kind of hone things in, listening closely, and also listening to the silence that is around you as well. Touch, that one's pretty easy. Touching the tree trunk, noting the different textures. Taste is a little tiny bit trickier. You can stick your tongue out and see if you can taste the forest. I bet you can taste something in the air. But you can also take yourself a snack and sit beneath the tree. You can gather a forage or gather herbs for trees, but please only if you know what you're doing. I don't want anyone dying for this, but these are things that I think that we all already know how to do, but the idea is just kind of luxuriating in them and bringing some awareness to each one of the activities. We want to immerse ourselves in presence. Can you imagine having yourself a nice sandwich beneath this beautiful swamp white oak? This oak is in my park near my house. I call it my park, but I don't know. I appreciate this tree, and I have had a snack or two underneath this tree. So that's the idea of just immersing yourself and trying to just be there with no real agenda other than being in the present moment. These are a few of the baseline tips that characterize the practice of what we are doing or what we are aiming for when we're there. So these are things that I like to, when I'm scheduling walks, I like to give people a little bit of a primer and say, these are the things that I'd like for you to consider before the walk start. Is when you come, please set a specific intention to connect to nature. The idea is that forest therapy experiences are not to be rushed. You take your time, and not a one-time event. Ideally, you want more than over and over again. There's hardly ever enough time, it seems. And a willingness to give generously of your attention in those moments. To just be in the moment is important. Guided forest therapy experiences offer a specific blend of gentle and physical and mental exercises that allow for progressive relaxation and connection. And throughout the experience, we call them walks, but it's not all walking. It's gentle exercises and gentle times to be still and connect with the things that are around you. Imagine this sit spot. This was one of my sit spots I actually enjoyed in North Carolina a few years ago. I love the light through the trees, but being able to just sit and do nothing and let life unfold, the web of life unfolds so easily once you're still. Many other things happen. We forest therapy guides are not therapists. The forest is the therapist. We're guides are there to support you as you awaken to your own unique connection. We're there to offer help. And much like mindfulness meditation practices, we encourage the full immersion in the present moment, as much presence as you can muster. And we guides offer ways of emphasizing and slowing down and even expanding that sensory noticing in all of the activities that we offer. And we're there to offer you inspiration and support so that you can receive your own medicine of the forest. Because as I said, the forest is the therapist, it's not us. And, going back to that innate connection that we all have with the natural world, I fully believe that last line is so true. That healing connection is ever and present within all of us. And nature and forest therapy can revitalize that innate connection to the natural world. And it's actually very accessible and easy to do. Many don't trust the ease, but it's pretty easy to do. We all do it naturally. This was a beautiful space, lovely little spot that I found in the Joyce Kilmer Forest on my very first ever Cullowhee Native Plant Conference field trip. The most magnificent tulip trees I'd ever seen there. And I love that spot. I love those entwined roots. So those are the moments that when you find something that delights you, you just stop and you just be there. That's the whole point of the being present. And I encourage you, as you establish your own practice, to be gentle with yourself and open-hearted to the process. Give yourself permission to slow down and give your logical mind a rest. Many of us aren't equipped, and that's not the right word. Many of us are not inclined to give ourselves time to slow down, and letting your logical mind rest doesn't always seem like the smart thing to do for many people, but it's crucial. Allow yourself the gift of time and presence. And please, I always think I shouldn't have to tell people or ask people to silence your device, but silence your devices. Have them with you for safety purposes, but put them away. Just open your awareness and trust that your senses will guide you. There's a lot of delight out there, a lot of things that can just call to you. So I encourage you to try this and see what happens, and let things call to you in that way. And speaking of calling, this is my favorite mother tree, another swamp white oak at the park near my house. They believe that this is one of the marker trees, and it's gigantic and enormous. And this beautiful tree has been my rock in many instances. I'm so enamored with this beauty. And so I urge all of you to spend some time getting to know a tree. Don't be shy. They're very welcoming, as you probably already know, but whatever your nature connection method is now, I encourage you to double up on it. One of the things that I like to do, especially underneath this tree when I'm working with my senses, is I like to try to sit eyes closed. And the moment that I think that I need to open them, I won't. I sit with my eyes closed even longer. I resist. I sit with it even longer. And it is incredible the things that you can hear differently. You can see a lot of interplay of shadows through your eyes. So I play with that and find your own way. There's plenty of other nature connections that we all have. I want to share this beautiful graphic here with you from the Healing Forest Network, which I highly recommend checking them out as well. These are just in general things that happen whenever you have a regular forest therapy practice. Boost your immunity, increase focus, better sleep, enhance your emotional intelligence, fight depression, improves mood and energy levels. All of these things reduce technology addiction. We know that. We all need these. Faster recovery from illness and injury. One of the things that I want to remind all of us, including myself, that nature calls to each one of us differently, and we can't expect to experience our time in nature the same way that everyone else does. You're wild ones. You can be wild. Endeavor to explore your own call. Not let yourself be, like I said, let yourself be serene or silly, playful or prayerful. Allow your inner child to emerge during these times. You immerse yourself in the present moment, and whatever arises if you feel the urge to go with it, you can go with it. There's no wrong way to do this. If you can allow yourself to sink into whichever sense calls your attention, just you can be still. Where this, as much as the exercises are wonderful and beneficial, so many things unfold when you're still in your sit spots. So many things unfold there, beautiful, magical moments. And so I have my closing wish for you all is that you amp up your love for the natural world. That's what Joanna Macy, whom I mentioned earlier, talks about, how we have this present moment and it's up to us to kind of just dive in and dial up the magic of that moment. And so I love this Mary Oliver quote that I wish all of you these strengthening throbs of amazement. She says, when she's talking about her connection to the natural world and the things that inspire her poetry, her beautiful poetry, she says, 10 times a day, something happens to me like this, some strengthening throb of amazement, some good, sweet, empathic ping and swell. This is the first, the wildest, and the wisest I know, that the soul exists and is built entirely out of attentiveness. So thank you very much for your kind attention. And I'm certainly open to questions, but especially with this group of wild ones, I'm really interested in collaborating. If anyone's interested, I want to connect forest therapy and biodiversity as much every day in every way possible. So there's my contact information, and you can feel free to contact me any other way. But I'll stop sharing now, and thank you again so much.
Thank you so very, very much. That was fantastic. I'm sure folks have questions. So
I worry that I talked too fast. I hope that I went slow enough. I see.
I mean, it's 6:46
I get
over
excited.
here.
I get excited. You know, this is a big thing for all of us,
It
you know,
is. It
and I
is.
think it's also something that we, you know, there's a lot of stigma in still in being called a tree hugger. You know, most of us love that, but it did not originate in a positive way. And I'm really all about reforming and using new language in the way that we talk about the natural world, because it is who we are.
Someone asked me one time, "Are you a tree hugger?" And I was like, "Yeah, like a full hug, not that side one arm nonsense. Full." Okay, folks. So, oh, and luckily 2 of our hike leaders are on the Zoom, so hopefully they grabbed your email address, because we would love to have you out.
Oh, I would love that. I would be happy to share it over and over again with everyone.
Fantastic, fantastic. So, any questions? Do y'all want to drop them in the chat? Just your name, and then I'll call you, and you can.
Oh,
That way, we're not talking over each other.
I actually would like to share a book with y'all that I'm
Yeah.
reading now that is really cool, called The Field Guide to Nature Meditation. This is one super awesome, helpful book. You know, I really love this book. I also highly recommend Dr. Ching Lee's book about the art and science of forest bathing. But this one, if you're into, you know, not everyone's into meditation and all that good stuff, but I mean, I don't know. I think that everyone probably is in a way. Let's see.
Struck by nature at Gmail. Yes.
Yeah, that's it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's see. Where I have a question. I'll go first. Where have you found the most profound results from your forest bathing? I'm assuming you've done this practice all over. Where, and do you feel like it was the headspace you were in going in, or was it the type of trees in which you were around or under, if that makes sense?
No, that does, it makes a lot of sense. And I think that, this is going to sound weird, but my happy place is a pitcher plant bog that is a big wide open space among a whole bunch of longleaf pines. It's called Buttercup Flats. And I'm telling you, I can have a terrible day, and the moment that I go there, there's something about, we all know that sense of place that's important to us. And for me, I have days where I do sit in the trees, but in many times I just sit in the middle of what feels like this, what it is. It's this huge savanna, but I hear the long leaves rustling and I know that they're there. And one of the things that has actually happened to me since I began my classes and completed my certification is that it seems like I need the forest even more than I did before. I really notice my time away now so much more than I ever did before. But I will tell you that there's just really nothing at all like being in the mountains, North Carolina woods in particular. And I'm thinking right now of Pinnacle Park, where I did my last walk for Cullowhee, and it was not a very big park, but it was surrounded by water. So I had all of these elements supporting and this beautiful symphony of mountain life. And I like to, for my own personal practice, I like to go places I have not been and just roam. I'm big into wonder. I love taking photos as well. I try to kind of either make photo taking my particular meditation at the time, or I don't take any photos at all, and I try to mentally take photos, so but I reckon I probably do have a space in my heart for pine trees. I like the longleaf pines. I can't get away from them. I think they're fascinating, but I have not met a native tree that I don't like, though. I will say that.
Awesome. Okay, our first question, or let's see. Lynn, would you like to ask your question? Or do you want me to read it off?
May I talk?
Yeah, I was just going to ask Nadine to repeat or just elaborate on what she mentioned at the end there, linking increased biodiversity with forest therapy. I feel like I noticed as a landscaper when I started working in native landscapes, just a very different feeling in the landscape, and of course appreciating the wildlife sightings so much more. But is this something you've studied or you are studying?
Well, I am studying it to as much degree as it's been studied by other people. Of course, we know there are major links between the greater the biodiversity, the higher the human health, the better quality of health that humans have. So I know about that, but one of the ways that I'm just trying every way I can to tie native plants and forest therapy together, because as Lana and I were talking about, whenever you're passionate about something, I want to do everything I can do to love and save the planet, but we all know that we all can't do it that way. It's going to take more. It's going to take small efforts by many of us together, working together. And so that's one of I love collaborating with people who understand, who look at the world differently than I do, especially people who work in the industry. If you're a landscaper, Lynn, I'm sure that you see things a lot differently. And I think you brought up something that's really crucial there with the native plant connection, is enjoying the wildlife. If you have the right kind of ecosystem, they will come. That's what I'm dreaming in my head, is that it certainly makes sense. But I am interested in other ideas about linking those two. So please reach out if you.
Excuse me, I'm Alice Jensen again.
Hey,
And-
Alice.
Oh, observing nature at all times. I was taught to observe nature as a toddler, and I'm still with it. And this is a picture of my pond, and you take photographs or observing. While I took that picture, I think the ice was crackling all around me. Or you go to a little detail. This is a feather just blew there and settled there, and it's a little bitty feather. So it keeps on, and take the pond at any time. It is changing. And so and when you aren't with a pond, you are with the individual tree blooms. So this is behind the plastic. The pawpaw bloom.
Oh yeah.
Early in the spring, sideways the picture right now, okay? And
Yeah.
if you ever look at the inside of it,
Oh, beautiful.
see that, and go back next year and look for it again. It will have changed all around. Then there are the fungi, the lichens, and there is no limit to nature. And or the butterfly that has just hatched.
Oh,
I don't have a picture of it here in my hand, but the butterfly that has just hatched and has not dried yet. And the underside of that butterfly. And just be observant and teach anybody next to you about things. If you tell the person next to you who doesn't have any idea about botany, what is a dandelion? Always start with a dandelion.
That was wonderful. Thank you, Alice, for sharing.
Let's see. Terry, did you have a comment about?
Yes, actually, I'm an obsessive photo taker when I'm hiking. And
Excellent.
Well, but thinking about forest bathing, I'm thinking that would be too much of a distraction. Don't you have to kind of forget that if you're going to really be in the moment? Or what have you found? Because you mentioned picture taking, and yet to me that would distract me.
Oh, when I first started, it was one of my biggest obstacles because I love to take photos. I can't help it. It's one of my favorite ways of connecting with nature, and I've just learned and as a forest therapy guide, I will tell you one of my biggest challenges is getting people to put their phone down and not take a picture. What I finally learned to say is, we can come back to this. We will take a mental note and we will come back. I mean, lighting differences, whatever, I understand that. But for me, it's being able to set that time aside, and to devote your attention to making, like I said, mental pictures instead. However, I have also had some super incredible, satisfying, strictly, I'm only going to take pictures of what I find fascinating and beautiful. And beauty is a real hook for all of us. I mean, beauty really tugs at you, so how could you possibly ignore beauty? You want to observe it and you want to hold it for as long as possible. And I understand that as a photographer, for sure. It's
You just have to find a balance, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I have a friend that he and I are talking about possibly just having a mindful photography class together, of working on, just that immersion of beauty there.
Thank you.
Thank you. I love your background.
That was right out my back door.
That's awesome.
Any other questions?
Lana, I have a question. It's Dennis Bishop. Hey, Nadine, if you were planting plants in your yard, I mean, the ones that would produce the most beneficial compounds, what would be on your list?
Well, of course, I'm going to have to tell you a cypress tree, of course, but my understanding, I would think all sorts of conifers are there among that. That is one of the things. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that reminds me, I mentioned earlier about Dr. Ching Lee's book having a map of aromatic forests in Japan. And so that would make me wonder, are there, I would certainly want the most fragrant forest ever in the world. So, but I would also probably pick all of those small understory trees like the buckeye and the silver bell. And, I don't know. That's a really good question, Dennis. It really is. And I would think there would maybe some more research could go into what other smaller understory things are there.
Okay. Well, certainly the pine trees would be on your list. The pine trees? Okay.
Oh yeah, conifers in particular are where it's at with regard to the highest concentration, with the cypress being the highest. So I suppose, as many conifers as you can put in there that are native to the landscape.
Yeah, because the alternative to forest bathing is just to surround yourself, at your home whenever possible with as many of these types of trees that would be most beneficial. I think Eastern red cedar might be on that list as well.
Yes. Oh, I would definitely agree. And that now that once you start talking about it, you think to begin with there's not that much, but once you start discussing it, there really is more out there. Oh,
Good.
thanks, Jenny. I was typing that.
Lynn has her hand raised virtually.
Lynn, that is a great question about forest therapy and PTSD, because I know I have cohorts who are in Australia currently who have been working with homeless veterans. And so I know that they've been offering, the way they do it, the walks that they're doing now are in botanic gardens in right outside of Melbourne. And I know that they have been working with groups like that. So I know there are specific initiatives to work with different, I hate to say target groups, but people, PTSD would certainly be one of those. And I could see that being very beneficial as far as ultimate relaxation there. And I've also seen one of the things that I'm particularly interested in is my heart breaks for people who are afraid of nature. Especially children who are afraid of nature. So that's one of the things that I really believe. I want to create a nature, kind of like a nature buddy system for people who want to sort of improve or enhance their connection to nature in that way, and they want to not be afraid. So I think that there is, I think that's a great question, Lynn. I'm glad you asked that.
Thanks so much. I was also, if there's still time, do you have any experience working with more elderly folks or people that can't walk very far?
Well, that has actually come up before for me at the Arboretum, because I had someone who called and asked me and it depends on, of course, the level of accessibility, but one of the main things that we ensure is that we work whenever we're creating trails, is when we're creating those certified trails, is that we're making sure that they are as accessible to as many people as possible. So we are taking into consideration, or at least, I don't know what they call them in Australia, but there are those, the equivalent of our ODA standards there. So I know that is definitely one of them. And it's actually something that I've pondered quite a bit, because I've seen these awesome all-terrain equipped electric chairs for people that they have in some of the national parks. And I was thinking to myself, if you could get one that was quiet, that would be fabulous, because there is a certain level, of course, of silence that you would need there. But yeah, that is definitely a major consideration, Lynn. The thing about whenever I do a walk on a trail, it's never more than a mile. And it reminds me in many instances of going on a field trip botanizing with people. It takes 5 hours to go half a mile, when you're looking at all the plants, but that's the glory of it, is that attention to detail.
Well, thank you again. Anyone else? Any other questions? We have plenty of time. We can do this till 7:30 or whenever. All right. Well, any closing remarks, Nadine? Thank you so much again for.
I've had a wonderful time, and I'd like to offer that if I've mentioned anything that anyone wants more research on, I've been studying this since 2016, 17, something like that. So I have a pretty nice file of research, and there's also a lot of current research going on. So if anyone wants more information about anything, I'm more than happy to share that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for making yourself available.
My
and
pleasure.
sharing your passion.
It's nice.
Making
It's
the
nice to
world
meet
a
sweet
better
people.
place. For sure. All right, everyone. Well, I'm going to end the Zoom. This is my first time. But again, thank you. Thank everyone for coming by today, and be on the lookout for other programs. And we will see y'all soon, hopefully in person.
Bye,
Thank you
y'all.
all.
Thanks,
Thanks so
Nadine.
much for having
Thanks,
me.
Lena.
Bye. Thank you.
Nadine,
you.
that was great.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye, y'all. Thank
Bye.
Bye.
you.